The sentence slipped out of his mouth so casually that even he did not realize how cruel it sounded until it was already hanging in the air, heavy and irreversible. He believed it was just an opinion, a preference shaped by logic and past disappointments. He believed life could be organized neatly, that love could be filtered like a list of requirements. What he did not know, standing there in that softly lit cafe on an ordinary evening, was that the next few hours would quietly dismantle everything he thought he understood about people, pain, and second chances. He had arrived early, as he always did, dressed carefully but without warmth, carrying the invisible armor of a man who trusted control more than emotion. At 38, he was successful by every measurable standard. His career had been built through discipline, detachment, and the belief that feelings only complicated progress. Relationships, to him, were supposed to be clean beginnings, untouched by heavy pasts or lingering grief. Widows, in his mind, carried stories that never truly ended. He believed he would always be competing with a ghost. When he learned the woman arriving for the blind date was a widow, the conclusion formed instantly, unchallenged. He did not consider the weight of loss, the years of silence after laughter disappeared from a home, or the courage it took to sit across from a stranger again. He only saw inconvenience, emotional risk, and a future that might demand empathy he had trained himself not to offer. That was when life decided to intervene. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that people are more than the labels placed on them, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that hearts can change, even when we least expect it. She arrived quietly, without drama, without the energy of someone trying to impress. There was a calmness about her that felt earned, not effortless. Her smile was gentle, not rehearsed, and her eyes carried something deeper than shyness. They carried survival. She was a woman who had walked through something devastating and had chosen, somehow, to keep going. He noticed small details without knowing why they unsettled him. The way she held her cup with both hands, as if grounding herself. The way she listened more than she spoke. The way her presence filled the space without demanding attention. None of it fit the assumptions he had built. As the evening unfolded, the world around them faded into background noise. He talked about his work, his goals, the life he had carefully engineered. She listened patiently, nodding, never interrupting, never redirecting the conversation toward herself. When she finally spoke about her life, it was not with sadness or longing, but with honesty. She did not present herself as broken, she presented herself as real. She had loved deeply once, she had lost deeply once, and she had learned that grief did not mean life was over, it meant life had changed shape. Something about that unsettled him. He felt a discomfort he could not name, like a belief quietly cracking. He had expected heaviness, instead he found strength. He had expected comparison, instead he found acceptance. She was not looking backward, she was simply carrying her past with respect. But pride is a stubborn thing. Even as something inside him softened, another part resisted. He reminded himself why he had rules, why he had drawn lines, why he believed what he believed. The evening ended politely. No promises, no dramatic confessions, just a quiet goodbye that felt heavier than it should have. As he walked away, he told himself he had done the right thing. He told himself clarity was kindness. He told himself avoiding emotional complexity was wisdom. That night, however, sleep refused to come. Her presence lingered in his thoughts, not as an image, but as a feeling, a calm that had unsettled him, a depth he could not dismiss. For the first time in years, his certainty felt thin, and life was not finished teaching him yet. The lesson did not arrive dramatically. It came slowly, patiently, like truth often does. Over the following weeks, he found himself noticing things he had once ignored. a widowed colleague who worked twice as hard to provide stability for her children, an elderly man in his building who still set 2 cups out every morning. Stories hidden in plain sight, lives shaped by loss but not defined by it. His own life, once so neatly arranged, began to feel strangely empty. The evenings felt longer, the successes felt quieter. The rules that had once given him comfort now felt like walls. Then, unexpectedly, life shifted again. A family emergency pulled him back to his childhood town, a place he had avoided for years. The house he grew up in stood unchanged, but stepping inside felt like walking into a museum of unresolved memories. His father had passed away suddenly years earlier, and his mother had never truly recovered. She had survived, but something inside her had folded inward, quietly. For the first time, he saw her not as a parent, but as a widow. He noticed how she paused before speaking, as if translating emotions into manageable pieces. He noticed how she still spoke his father's name softly, not with pain, but with respect. He noticed how she had never stopped loving, even while moving forward. One evening, as they sorted through old boxes, he found letters his mother had written after his father's death. They were not letters of despair. They were letters of survival. She wrote about learning how to breathe again, about choosing to wake up, about loving someone who was no longer physically present without letting that love destroy the future. Something inside him broke open. He realized that what he had feared was not widows, it was vulnerability. It was the idea that loving deeply meant risking loss. He had built his life to avoid pain, not realizing he had also been avoiding connection. The memory of the woman from the cafe returned, sharper now, clearer. He wondered what strength it had taken for her to show up that night, what courage it had taken to sit across from someone who might judge her without ever knowing her story. The realization hit hard. He had not just rejected a woman, he had dismissed an entire human experience. Days later, driven by a mixture of regret and curiosity, he reached out again, not with expectation, not with entitlement, just with honesty. When they met again, the atmosphere was different, softer, less guarded. He did not come armed with rules, he came with questions, and more importantly, with humility. He listened this time, truly listened. She spoke of nights that felt endless, of learning how silence could be loud, of discovering that grief did not move in straight lines. But she also spoke of resilience, of unexpected laughter, of finding joy without guilt. He began to understand that loving a widow did not mean living in the shadow of someone else. It meant honoring a chapter that had already been written, not trying to erase it. Slowly, trust grew, not the reckless kind, but the steady kind, the kind built on respect. And then life tested him one final time.
The call came on a rainy afternoon, the kind of rain that feels symbolic whether you want it to or not. A medical emergency, sudden, serious, the kind that forces clarity in seconds. As he sat in the hospital waiting room, surrounded by strangers, united by fear, he felt something he had avoided for most of his adult life: helplessness, and with it, the deep need for connection. She arrived without hesitation, not because she owed him anything, but because she understood what it meant to sit in uncertainty. She did not try to fix anything. She simply stayed. In that moment, he understood the greatest lesson of all. Love was not about avoiding pain. It was about choosing presence, even when pain was possible. Widows were not reminders of death. They were evidence of love strong enough to survive it. When the crisis passed and relief finally settled in, he felt changed in a way that could not be undone. He was no longer the man who categorized people by risk. He was someone who understood that the deepest connections often come from shared vulnerability.
If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach people who need them most. Before this story ends, leave a comment telling us one thing you believe people misunderstand about love, loss, or second chances. Your words might help someone who is quietly struggling. Months later, as they built a life that honored the past without being trapped by it, he often thought back to that first sentence he had spoken so carelessly. It no longer embarrassed him, it humbled him, because without that mistake, he might never have learned the truth. Life does not teach lessons gently, it teaches them honestly. And sometimes, the people we think we cannot love are the very ones who teach us how. If this story stayed with you, if it made you reflect, feel, or heal, please engage with the video. Your support keeps stories like this alive, stories that remind us we are all more than our worst moments, and that love, when chosen bravely, always finds a way.